The soft clink of a spoon tapping porcelain echoed in the quiet elegance of Monde Bleu, Manhattan's most exclusive café, where every chair seemed to breathe old money and high society. At table 3, a young girl, no older than 10, sat up straight. Her small hands floated uncertainly in the air, trying to locate the Braille menu that was supposed to be there. Her eyes were hidden behind thick sunglasses, masking the quiet panic rising with every passing minute. She whispered, her voice trembling beneath the hum of the espresso machine. "Mom, please come back. I'm scared." No one answered. No one came. The staff walked past her like she was just another empty seat. They all knew who her mother was, Vivienne Lancaster, the icy queen of haute couture, a woman who could bring an entire fashion house to its knees with a single phone call. And nobody at Monde Bleu was about to risk their career on a gesture that might be seen as too forward, except for Amara Blake. A 26-year-old waitress with deep brown skin and tightly tied back hair, she had been wiping down a table nearby. In her eyes, there was no hesitation, only quiet resolve. Amara walked slowly toward table 3. Every step pulled eyes from all corners of the room. Some surprised, some judging, some silently warning. But she didn't stop. She knelt gently beside the chair. "Hi there, I'm Amara. Your mom will be back soon. But while we wait, would it be okay if I sit with you?" The girl turned toward the voice, her lips trembling. "My name is Sophie. Mom said I'm not allowed to order food if she's not here." Amara smiled, resting her hand softly on the edge of the table. "Well then, if it's on me, would that be all right?" A small, cautious nod, and then a shy smile began to bloom across that frightened little face. What no one else in the cafe knew was that right outside the large glass windows, Vivienne Lancaster sat in her car, watching everything unfold. And in that seemingly insignificant moment, the first cracks began to form. Monde Bleu wasn't just a cafe, it was a stage. Every table was a spotlight, every customer a self-proclaimed star. And the soft lighting from the high ceilings wasn't there for ambiance. It was there to illuminate Italian leather shoes, custom handbags, and watches worth more than an apartment in Brooklyn. This was where legendary designers whispered over espresso, where creative directors unveiled their next big collection. Every detail was intentional. From the precise water temperature for the tea to the panoramic view of Fifth Avenue. In that world, Amara Blake didn't quite fit the picture. She was the newest hire, just 3 weeks into the job. Her mornings started at 5 a.m., rushing to get her little brother Eli to his school for blind children in the Bronx. Her nights ended curled up on a twin bed, filling out music scholarship applications. For him. Amara's life was made up of quiet sacrifices no one ever saw. Skipping breakfast to afford Braille textbooks, picking the late shift so she could walk Eli home safely. And every time she served a perfect espresso to yet another arrogant fashion CEO, she swallowed the dream she'd once chased. Her final year in a psychology degree, she had to abandon to raise her brother. As for the little girl at table 3, Sophie Lancaster, all it took was her last name for people in fashion to straighten their posture. The only daughter of Vivienne Lancaster, founder of Lancaster Atelier, the couture house known for its icy slogan, "Control is everything." A woman admired by all, approached by none. Flawless in appearance, with a stare cold enough to freeze a boardroom in seconds. Inside this so-called exclusive cafe, a place that was really a polished arena for silent hierarchy, Amara and Sophie were about to do something no one saw coming. A quiet collision between kindness and calculated power. A single moment that cracked the invisible wall A single careless movement. The crystal vase on table 3 tipped over, water spilling across the surface and soaking into the delicate silk dress. Sophie flinched. Her hands darted out, searching for napkins, but found only air. She tried to wipe it up, unaware of where the water had spread. Her lips pressed tightly together, her small fingers trembling. Someone in the cafe let out a soft chuckle. Another guest shook their head and whispered, "Poor little Lancaster girl." No one moved, except Amara Blake. No fuss, no asking for permission. She simply stepped forward. Amara gently leaned down and placed her hand on the table so Sophie would know someone was approaching. "It's okay, sweetheart. I'm Amara. I'm here to help." She quickly dabbed the water with a cloth napkin, folded it, and placed it right by Sophie's hand, so the girl could wipe the parts of her dress, Sophie murmured. Still dry. "Yep, and it's totally fine. I once spilled an entire pot of hot chocolate on a CFO." Sophie let out a soft giggle, her first laugh in over an hour of waiting alone. Amara sat down beside her, picked up a cookie, and gently placed it in Sophie's hand. "Round shape, rough side on top. That's the chocolate. Bottom's a little spongy. Baked shortbread. Try a little nibble from the left edge." Sophie followed her instructions and smiled. "You describe things like a storybook. I'm just telling the truth. My little brother's blind too." Since he was 6, Sophie tilted her head. Amara continued, her voice dropping just slightly. "I know what it feels like. Not to see. But more than that, I know the pain of being seen only as a burden. Like losing your sight means you lose your worth." Amid the cold glass walls and rigid rules of that pristine cafe, Amara didn't just see Sophie. She made Sophie feel seen, and sometimes that alone is enough to change an entire life. The glass doors of Monde Bleu swung open, soft as a breath of cold air. The entire cafe held its breath for a split second. Vivienne Lancaster entered, white trench coat, dark sunglasses, crimson lips. She needed no introduction. No one dared meet her gaze. She walked straight past the manager, Alex, who rushed toward her, nearly stumbling as he bowed, stammering, "Mrs. Lancaster, I sincerely apologize for the inconvenience." Vivienne didn't stop. She didn't look at him. Her eyes locked on table 3, where her daughter sat with a waitress, who was smiling. "Jade Robinson, is it?" Vivienne's voice was as cold as glass. Amara rose to her feet, calm and composed. Her hands were folded politely in front of her, but her eyes didn't flinch. "No, ma'am. I'm Amara Blake." Vivienne looked down, at the mug of hot chocolate, the half-eaten cookie, and the neatly folded napkin beside the plate. I asked, "How much was this meal?" Around the cafe, heads turned away. Staff froze mid-motion. Amara answered without hesitation, "No charge, ma'am." A heavy silence settled. Vivienne stared at her for a few more seconds, then took Sophie's hand and turned to leave. "Come, darling, we're going." But Miss Amara promised to teach me how to tell the difference between cappuccino and macchiato by the smell, Sophie called out. Vivienne said nothing. The doors closed behind them. Seconds later, Alex stormed up, face flushed red with fury. "Are you out of your mind? Do you even realize what you've just done? I helped a hungry child. You served a guest without permission? Do you even know who Vivienne is?" Amara didn't answer right away. She just looked him in the eye. "I don't need to know, but I do know what it looks like when someone fears a woman, more than they fear doing the wrong thing. Get out. Now your termination letter will be sent tonight." Amara said nothing. She simply removed her apron, placed it gently on the counter, and walked out. And in that cafe where people feared power more than they respected justice, someone just dared to stand tall. The third-floor apartment in Brooklyn felt colder than usual this winter. The heater had been broken since last week. Amara sat quietly on a worn wooden chair, her legs curled beneath a frayed blanket. On the table in front of her lay a thin envelope, the termination letter from Monde Bleu. Right beside it, an eviction notice, rent due in 5 days. She didn't cry. She just stared at the paper, as if staring long enough might somehow make the words disappear. Her phone buzzed. It was Eli, her little brother, currently living at a residential academy for blind youth. Amara pressed the phone to her ear, trying to sound normal. "Hey, sweetheart. You okay?" "Yeah, everything's fine." A pause. Then Eli spoke, his voice soft, like a thought he'd been holding in for too long. "You always told me, everything happens for a reason. I still believe you." Amara bit her lip, eyes stinging. "Even if I lost my job for helping a child, even then." He paused, then added gently, "Because if you still choose what's right when the world chooses wrong, then the world needs more people like you." Amara let out a laugh, a broken little sound, somewhere between pain and gratitude. She looked up at the ceiling, wrapping her arms around herself. No one was there to comfort her, no one to protect her, but someone believed in her, and that was enough to keep her from falling apart. Outside the window, the rain began to fall, but inside Amara, something small was beginning to take root. Not hope, something stronger, determination. Because she knew, if doing the right thing had cost her everything, then maybe, just maybe, doing the right thing was also the very thing that would give it all back. The next morning, as Amara folded clothes and got ready to visit the legal aid center, firm and cold. "Miss Amara Blake, this is Margaret Cho, legal assistant for Lancaster Group. Mrs. Vivienne requests your presence at headquarters, 9 a.m. today." Amara froze. Before she could respond, the line went dead. The Lancaster Atelier headquarters sat in the heart of Manhattan's financial district, a towering glass building, as sleek and unfeeling as its founder. Amara stood outside the revolving door, wearing an old olive dress she'd saved from her college interview years ago. She took a deep breath and walked in. Floor 42. The conference room looked more like a minimalist art gallery, vast, cold, immaculate. Vivienne stood at the far end, back turned. "You know why I called you here, don't you?" Amara said nothing. "Yesterday I left Sophie alone, not because I forgot. I wanted to see who would care." Silence. Amara frowned. "You abandoned your daughter to run a moral experiment?" Vivienne turned around. "Exactly. And you were the only one who stopped." She gave a subtle nod. Margaret stepped forward and laid 2 folders on the table. "This one is compensation for your dismissal. The other is a job offer. Personal companion to Sophie. Salary 10 times your current pay. Full music scholarship for your brother." Amara glanced at the check, then pushed it gently back. "I'm not for sale. And using a child to measure someone's humanity is vile." The room fell completely still. Margaret whispered, "No one's ever spoken to Mrs. Vivienne like that." But Vivienne didn't lash out. She simply stared at Amara for a long, quiet moment, and for the first time, in those famously icy eyes, there wasn't control. There was a question mark. Amara eventually accepted the offer, not because of the numbers on the contract, not because it was a chance to change her life, but because of a blind little girl whose mind was sharper than anyone Amara had ever met, and because of a younger brother who still believed his sister was born to do the right thing. The Lancaster family lived in a French-style mansion in the Upper East Side, everything quiet, pristine, so perfectly arranged, it hardly felt real. Amara became Sophie's sole companion, from Braille lessons during the day to classical music sessions under the glass roof at night. With each passing day, Sophie became more alive. She laughed more, asked more questions, and Vivian stayed the same. Her expression never changed, but her gaze lingered on her daughter longer, quieter, softer. Then one afternoon, while organizing old books in Sophie's room, Amara discovered a wooden box hidden behind a stack of hardcovers. Inside was a Braille-embossed journal and a USB drive. Trevor helped me hide it. "It's Mom's journal," Sophie whispered. That night, once Sophie was asleep, Amara plugged the USB into her laptop in her private room. Lines of journal entries appeared across the screen. Old photos, Sophie before she lost her sight, news footage that had never aired, and then an email. "Vic, stop hiding. We all know you were the one behind the wheel. The lawyer covered it up, but the truth is still the truth." Trevor, Lancaster, Amara froze. Vivian was the driver in the crash that left Sophie blind. And worse, she had blocked every attempt at treatment, refused every new procedure, for 5 years. Because deep down, Vivian feared that if her daughter could see again, Sophie would finally see her for who she really was, a woman built on control and drowning in guilt. On a gray-skied morning, inside the sunlit living room of the Lancaster estate, Amara sat across from Gabriel Vivien's brother, a man who had quietly withdrawn from the world of finance after a scandal of unclear origin. Without a word, he placed a thick folder on the table, copies of internal emails, suppressed medical reports, pages from Vivien's journal, and most significantly, a recording of a conversation between Vivien and her attorney from 5 years ago. "I tried to stop her," Gabriel said quietly, eyes heavy with regret. But she truly believed it was how she was protecting Sophie. Amara nodded. They both looked toward the staircase where Sophie was coming down, hand gliding along the banister, her hair neatly tied back, her face turned toward her mother, even if she couldn't see her. "Mom," Sophie spoke, her voice unusually calm. "I know now." Vivien froze. "Know what?" "You were the one driving, and you refused every treatment option for the past 5 years. Vivien said nothing. Her shoulders trembled slightly. "I don't hate you for the accident." Sophie continued. "I hate that you never gave me a chance, that you never gave me the right to choose." Each word fell into the room like a blade, cutting into something Vivien had always clung to control. She collapsed into the nearest chair. For the first time, no flawless makeup could mask the tears spilling down her face. She whispered, "I was afraid that if you ever saw me, you'd leave me." Sophie stepped forward, reaching out to her mother's face, fingers tracing gently across her cheek, like mapping a memory. "I've always seen you, even without eyes. But what hurts is the lie." And just like that, the woman who once commanded the fashion world with a glance now sat small and shattered, not because she lost power, but because she lost the trust of the only person who truly mattered. A few weeks later, the name Sophie Lancaster returned to the headlines, but not as a child fashion icon in a glossy ad campaign. This time, she was the face of a quiet revolution. An advanced vision restoration program had been revived, and Sophie was among its first patients. The results weren't perfect, but they were enough for her to distinguish between light and shadow, enough to tell where the door was and where the sky began. For someone who had lived in darkness for 5 years, that was nothing short of a miracle, and that miracle spread faster than any headline. Vivienne Lancaster, once condemned for her blind ambition, suddenly announced the dissolution of several of the company's vanity-driven projects. In their place, she restructured the foundation, named after her daughter, the Sophie Foundation. No longer a PR campaign, it became a global initiative supporting blind and visually impaired children. From funding sensory-responsive eyewear for kids in remote regions to building integrated Braille learning schools in Nairobi, Rio, and Jakarta. At the heart of it all was Amara Blake. No longer just Sophie's companion, Amara was appointed lead coordinator of the foundation, overseeing scholarships, inclusion programs, and a global support network for families raising children with disabilities. The woman once fired from a café was now a guiding light for a new generation. At the launch of the Light Beyond Sight initiative, Amara stood before hundreds of guests, her gaze steady, her voice unwavering. Power only has meaning when it's used to lift up those who have none. Not a single round of applause rang hollow, because everyone there knew she didn't just say it, she lived it. One late autumn afternoon, the Lancaster estate garden glowed under a soft golden sun, filled not with fashion elites or corporate executives, but with laughter. Children's laughter. Blind children from all over, along with their parents, had gathered to attend an exhibition called Touching Light, Experiencing Light Through the Hands. At the center of the garden stood sculptures made of wood, stone, fabric, and even sound, each one created by Sophie herself throughout her treatment journey. Wearing her color-sensing support glasses, she proudly explained to the other kids, "I don't see with my eyes, but I see with my imagination and touch." A little boy, no more than 6, tugged on Vivienne's hand and pointed to Sophie, asking with childlike innocence, "Ma'am, were you blind too?" Vivienne paused. She looked at the boy with softened eyes, then slowly knelt down. "No, sweetheart, but I used to be. Just not with my eyes." At the reception podium, Amara Blake stood alongside the Sophie Foundation's board. But this time, she wasn't just a staff member. She wasn't a companion anymore. She was now a co-executive partner, with full authority and her own operational budget. No one had handed her that power. She earned it through integrity, through courage, and by refusing to stay silent in the face of injustice. And during her closing remarks, Amara smiled gently, her hand firmly holding Sophie's. Sometimes, to truly see the world, we need to close our eyes. And to save a family, all it takes is one person who refuses to stay silent. No applause came at first, only silence, a beautiful, reflective silence, before the entire garden erupted in thunderous, lasting applause.